Hi guys, Shane again with the Wilderness Field Journal. Shooting a video today which is kind of an epilogue wrap-up video of my 4-day backpacking trip in Dolly Sods, West Virginia. One thing I have to say about Dolly Sods, West Virginia is it absolutely lived up to the hype. It was just as cool as everybody says it was. We picked the perfect time of year to go. It was on the autumnal equinox and it was just the beginning of fall. It was beautiful. It was almost like fall was happening right before our eyes in front of us. Outstanding. One of the complaints that I had about Dolly Sods, if any, was that it was overly crowded. When we camped the second night, we had so many people around us with big families and they were screaming and hollering and making a bunch of racket. It really disrupted our kind of wilderness experience. But aside from that, it was outstanding and I would totally go back again. First and foremost, the Vask Ericsson GTX boots. These boots are fantastic. I'm so happy I got these. They worked perfect on the trip. They are actually still in excellent shape. Even this one, which if you remember from the trip, this one was the one that I stepped in a puddle and I was completely up to my knee in mud. Still could probably use a little cleaning around there, but I mean, just a quick rinse off in a stream, they're excellent. My hat, the military surplus boonie hat, great choice. This hat was lightweight, comfortable, kept the sun out of my face, gave me something to cover my head with. Really, really happy that I brought this along with me. Also, my water bottles, simple US issue, military issue canteens, lightweight, super durable. They worked great, no complaints there. The survival vest, what can I say? I love it. I've been using it for years. It worked great for me. One of the awesome things about bringing this survival vest on the trip was that it allowed me to go on our day hike without bringing my main pack and still keeping all the important survival gear with me. One of the really amazing things about this trip, which is a treat I so rarely have when I go on these backpacking trips, is no rain. Not even a threat of rain. We basically had no chance of rain the entire time. The weather was absolutely perfect. Because of that, this tarp that I'm sitting on, didn't use it, didn't need it. I still would have brought it because you always want that cover. Marmot rain jacket, really great piece of gear. Didn't need it, didn't rain at all, but still would have brought it just in case. One of the real standouts from the trip that surprised me was these cheap Walmart shoes. These were 10 bucks at Walmart, total junky, cheap Croc knockoffs. They worked so well. I was able to go creek stomping with them. I wore them around the camp. They protected my toes from getting banged up on rocks. They were super comfortable, really light, very durable. Well worth the purchase. It was kind of a last minute impulse buy and ended up being great. One of the things I am noticing here is they're starting to show a little fatigue right where that bend is, which, I mean, they're just cheap shoes. They'll probably break eventually, but even if I never use them again, they were so worth it just to have for this trip. EMS chair, totally, totally worth it. This thing's incredibly comfortable. Used it a lot on the trip. This cheap foam mat, look at what a beating this thing took. It worked out really good. I don't really use foam pads in my hammock too often, but I do think this helped me stay warm at night and add a lot of comfort to the hammock, so that was also worth it. Another essential piece of kit was this Sven saw. This thing was awesome, well worth the wait of bringing it. Use it for bucking logs, for firewood, cutting up other pieces of wood. Definitely well worth the wait. Going into the pack, utility pocket. This was my camera case. This worked so well for keeping all my camera gear dry and protected. The charger that I brought with me and the cordage for that all worked really well. Another piece of gear that I'd like to mention that I used on this trip was the camera. It's a Sony CyberShot DSC HX80. That is a mouthful. They need to come up with a more catchy title than that. But this is the first time using that camera. Hopefully all the footage turned out okay. I haven't even watched it yet. But I really had a lot of fun using it. It's a great piece of kit, super lightweight, has the flip out screen which enabled me to film myself a lot. As I said, the battery packs that I used to keep everything charged worked really well. I had more than enough power to film the entire time. And this tripod, the Sun Pack 4200XL also worked really well for the trip. It was lightweight. I was able to use it like a selfie stick. Worked really well. So we'll see what the footage looks like, but as far as use goes, it was pretty great. I brought a lot of fire starting gear. I had this fire starting kit. But something I will say that I thought about as far as fire making goes, I probably would have been totally fine with just my Pathfinder knife, my big Pathfinder Ferrocerium rod, and some Bic lighters. I could have started every single fire with them, but I guess it's good to have some extra fire starting equipment. The hammock, perfect, no complaints there. I'm telling you guys, mosquito hammock, check it out if you're looking for hammock. Originally, if you look on that video, you can see I was going to bring my Slumberjack bag, which is my warmer sleeping bag and the one I would use in colder weather. But I kept looking at the weather forecast before the trip and it didn't look like it was going to be that bad. So at the very last minute, I decided to switch it up to this Recon Gen 3 bag. Excellent decision. This bag is more versatile. It ended up being more comfortable because it really didn't get that cold out there. And with the addition of this fleece, when it did get cold, I could just put this extra layer on and I was totally comfortable. Also, can never stress enough how great this Cocoon Hyperlight pillow is. This thing just makes every night of sleeping. Love it. The clothing that I brought for the trip worked really, really well. A couple of thermal long sleeve shirts. It was good to have two of these because one of them I was able to use for my cooking and around Camp One, and the other one I was able to sleep in so that I kept my clothes clean and not smelling like food when I slept in bear country. These Eastern Mountain Sports zip-off pants were a real standout for the trip too. Man, I wore these every single day. I had a set of clothes that I slept in so that I could keep them clean and they wouldn't have any food smells on them in bear country. But pretty much all day, every day, I was wearing these pants. I even swam in the creek with these. A cool feature they have that you don't see too often is they're zip off, zip up. So they actually have a zip up the back of the sort of boot cuff so that you can actually take this bottom part of the pants on and off without taking your boots off. That was a really, really useful feature when we were hiking in that heavy brush on our off-trail hike, and I needed to put these on because my legs were getting so scratched up by the brush. Tough, lightweight, fast drying. I'm not too into the integrated belt because you can't really take it out and put a different belt in, but I guess that does save you a little weight. But great piece of kit, warm every day. This Techwick shirt is lightweight, fast drying, and it is wicking, so it's good performance that way. But I noticed that I had some cotton shirts and I had this Techwick polyester shirt, and this Techwick shirt stunk a lot more, a lot sooner than the cotton shirts. And I know cotton has its disadvantages, but it seemed like it didn't smell as much as quickly out in the wild. First aid wise, the only thing I needed was a couple of alcohol wipes and some Advil, really. I still would have brought this entire first aid kit. You always want to be prepared, but it's kind of a good feeling to know that I didn't really need it. Mess kit, no complaints there. As you can see, lots and lots of soot on this pot. I actually had even put some hot coals on top of it at one point to help me bake my bannock. But this MSR pot, I cannot sing its praises enough. It's awesome. So this is the food I have left after 4 days in the woods. Let's take a look. I ended up with a little bit of leftovers from almost every meal. A little bit of leftover rice and beans, a little bit of leftover noodles, some leftover ghee. You know what? I definitely did bring too much food on this trip. I had a lot more than what I needed, and a lot of times I would make meals and I would be full and still have stuff left over. But in hindsight, I still am happy about the amount of food that I brought with me, because this amount of food that I have left over here could have sustained me for an extra day had something happened and I've been stuck out there. Didn't drink quite as much whiskey as I brought, but yet again, it's always good to have some extra. Another real standout piece of gear from the kit was this Sawyer water filter. I'd never tried one of these before, and it ended up working out really, really well. We all had one, we all used them, and it worked great, and I drank a ton of that creek water and never got sick. It's funny, in the beginning of the trip, I was boiling water pretty much the entire time. I didn't even break that thing out till later on in the trip. But once I did, I was hooked. So something that I realized in the trip that worked really well for me is I had a clean bag that I would keep the filter itself in. Even though it wasn't completely clean, it was mostly clean. I would shake off as much contaminated water as I could. And then I would have a dirty bag where I would keep the actual squeeze bag, because that thing was completely dirty. It was covered and filled with contaminated water. So by doing that, it kind of helped me compartmentalize things and keep them as clean and orderly as possible. This back flush syringe worked really well. I did have to back flush it several times on the trip, but that's kind of how you're supposed to maintain it, so there's nothing wrong with that. One of the pieces of gear that I took on the trip that I'm still kind of on the fence about is this Pathfinder stove. Now I have to say, Pathfinder cup is excellent. It was heavy to bring, but I'm so glad that I brought it. I used it every day. Where's the lid? It was just perfect for boiling small amounts of water, and it gave me a cup to drink out of too. So, no doubts there. The stove, on the other hand, I'm still not quite sure about. This is the first time I've really used it. I've owned this kit for years, but this is the first time I've used the stove component of it. And typically I would carry this for my stove, which you may have seen me use in other videos, the Explorer Grid. This little thing works awesome. But the Pathfinder stove is a little lighter and it is a little smaller. It takes up essentially no room in your pack because it just mounts onto the cup like that. But I do have to say that I found it a little bit hard to control the temperature on top of this. It's next to impossible to get a fire going inside of here because it's so small. I did try that and I was able to do it, but it's tricky. But with this grate, you can put your pot on top of it and you have total flexibility of the fire underneath. You can make it bigger, smaller, change logs, whatever. Where this thing, I ended up having to kind of have it right near the edge of the fire pit so I could prop the handle of my cup onto a rock, and it was really hard to manipulate the fire around it. So I'm not going to completely disown this piece of gear, and I probably will use it again. In fact, one of the things I think about is this might be perfect for a day hike where you want to make a little fire and all you're bringing is just this. You could have lunch with just this one compact kit, which is really nice. I could have this on the survival vest and just carry the survival vest and not have to carry this big piece of gear here. But for a multi-day camping trip like I had, where I'm doing a lot of cooking and I'm doing some complex cooking, I did kind of miss this great stove. In fact, if any of you have opinions of what you think of these two different stoves, this one's definitely lighter and without a doubt smaller. But yeah, share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what ideas you have. Last but certainly not least was the Kelty Tioga backpack. This pack is just incredible. I could not have done this trip without it. Well worth the money I paid for it. The only real gear failure I actually had on the trip was this end right here. If you look, you can see I dented it in on the back there and I lost the cap. It should look like this. I am not exactly sure how that happened, but I can imagine a lot of times I would sit on rocks when I was taking a break during the hike, and I must have just banged it against a rock and popped that little cap out. I'm going to get in touch with Kelty and see if they'd be able to provide me with a new cap. If not, maybe I can fabricate something, but if that's the worst gear failure that I had on the trip, I think I'm doing pretty well. That just about wraps it up. Now that I have a gear explosion in my yard, I'm going to go through everything and put it away. This video was a good excuse for me to start unpacking my pack and get all this gear put away. My final thoughts for the Dolly Sods was it is an amazing piece of this country. And if you ever have a chance to check it out, I highly recommend it. As I said, it lived up to all the hype. It was absolutely beautiful. Some of the landscapes are just breathtaking, and you go in and out of forests and open fields, and the undulating terrain creates these beautiful vistas. It was just incredible, and I really hope the video that we shot reflects that. Thanks so much to Andy and Dave for coming along. You guys were amazing to have on the trip. Really great friends, really great outdoorsmen, and thank you for coming along with me. And thank you guys for watching the videos and commenting and giving me likes. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. This is Flapjack signing out.